Hello again. It's been a year since I last posted. Well, a year and some change. Today's my birthday. The exact moment of my birth has already come and gone, and here I am, still alive. I wish I could take such a thing for granted. I was born 12 minutes after midnight. Inside a lockbox in my parents' closet is a birth certificate as 12 minutes past midnight. Sequestered at the bottom, beneath everything else to bury its existence, is a death certificate. 12 a.m. Both bear my name and the date and the year of my birth. I've been running all year, 4 times a week, or perhaps 3 when I feel I need a rest. It's difficult. I'm focusing on both speed and stamina after all, as 12 minutes is a long time to run. I'm almost at a 12-minute mile. I run the same route every day, because, as tedious as that sounds, I need to know it by heart. I run it regardless of the weather, because I need to be able to keep my footing in snow, slush, or rain. Sometimes when I see other people out running, I wonder what it is they're running from. I think we're all running from death, in our own way. Other runners might talk about how it gives them more energy, or makes them feel better, or countless other benefits. But I think subconsciously, we all know, we're just trying to outrun death, trying to keep our hearts and lungs strong, so that we can better fight off that spectre if it chances to cross our path. They just don't want to admit it. My running is out of desperation. I was training for one run in particular, the only one that would matter. Every year, in those 12 minutes in which I lay somewhere between life and death, the void comes to claim me. During my childhood, I tried hiding from it, until it followed me. Then I tried fighting it, until it became too strong and overpowered me. Now, all that's left to me is flight. Last year, I outran it, and this year I hope to do the same. I wonder how long it will work. There is a limit to the human body, and as my life arches inexorably towards an end, the void's shadow over me grows stronger. To that end, I started looking for answers. I started with my parents. I wanted to proceed carefully, as I do love my parents, and didn't want to upset them unnecessarily. They've been unaware of my yearly struggle, and have attributed my anxiousness around my birthday as holiday stress. It's a convenient excuse, especially as I've gotten older and actually do have things to worry about around Christmas. My job, presents, putting up lights on my house, the usual. This year though, as November rolled around, I started hinting that there was something else that was bothering me, that I was actively dreading my birthday. My parents tried to make light of it, saying that if it bothered me so much, we could just skip past it this year. I could open my presents from them at home, and we wouldn't make a big deal out of it at all. Whatever made me happy. No, it's not that, I told them. I told them over dinner, about a week before Thanksgiving. It's just, I can't sleep right before my birthday. I'm always awake around midnight, and it's like, those 12 minutes after midnight just feel weird. I watched them carefully out of the corner of my eye, trying to do so inconspicuously. Surely they didn't know. Surely they wouldn't have let me struggle by myself all these years, fighting for my life in the silence of my bedroom, without anyone the wiser. I was still relieved to see that they didn't react in any unusual way. My mother just said that's an odd thing, and maybe I could try taking some medicine that would help me sleep. I waited a few minutes, and then said something that did make them pause. Did anything odd happen during my birth? Mum and Dad looked up at each other from across the table. Then Mum said something had happened, but they hadn't brought it up because it was such an unpleasant memory. After dinner, we all sat down in the living room, and they brought down my death certificate. I stared at it and tried to pretend I was seeing it for the first time, while Dad told me the story. How I'd been born and I wasn't crying. The nurses quickly whisked me away. No one told them what was happening, my mum said. She was crying for her baby, and the nurses were cleaning up like nothing was wrong. Then, after a little bit, after my dad threatened to punch the doctor, I was brought back in. I was fine, the nurses said. Nothing to be worried about. They put my name on the birth certificate, and a day later we were leaving the hospital. That was when it got really odd, my dad said. They found a slip of paper tucked under the windshield wiper of their car. It was a death certificate, the one I was holding, and there was a handwritten note with it. They didn't keep the note, but he remembered every word of what it said. "I'm sorry. You deserve to know." My dad hounded the hospital after that, demanding answers. "It wasn't funny," he said. "What kind of sick prank was this? What exactly happened to his daughter?" My mother, in the meantime, tried to put the entire incident out of her mind and focused on their new baby. They never got a satisfactory answer. The doctor whose name was on the death certificate was conveniently never available when he called. He wanted to go to the hospital in person and find the doctor, but my mother talked him out of it. He'd had enough heated exchanges with the hospital staff at that point, that they might just call security and throw him out. Best to just move on, my mother said. Whatever happened, I was alive and well now, and that was what mattered. The story clearly upset my mother, for she got up to make tea. I covertly took photos of the death certificate when she did, probably something I should have done when I first found it, but I don't think the extra months would have changed much. I couldn't find any trace of the doctor that signed it. It's been so long that I suppose he doesn't work there anymore, and has been gone long enough that no one knows where he is now. It's not an unusual name either, so simply looking him up online isn't going to yield any meaningful results. All I know is that something unusual happened in that hospital. A death certificate was filled out but never filed. It was given to my parents in secret, and because of whatever happened there, my death comes chasing after me every year in the 12 minutes I was neither alive nor dead. I didn't tell my parents what happens to me every year. I fear it would destroy them to know. Instead, I began planning for this year's flight. The next part of my plan was far riskier, but I thought that if I was going to figure this out, it was essential that I get help. The sheer volume of comments on my Reddit post convinced me of that, for so many ideas were thrown at me that it was overwhelming. And while the online support is appreciated, I think having someone closer to the problem, someone I know in person, would be beneficial. I called one of my friends up. She's someone I go running with. We worked together a few years ago. We connected, and on Saturdays we go on runs together. I wouldn't consider her a best friend. I'm not sure I have any of those, to be honest, but I felt she was the best option, since she was already a runner. I asked her if she wanted to do something unusual on my birthday. Go running at midnight, in the 12 minutes before I was born. The idea intrigued her, and since she had some vacation time she planned to take anyway, she agreed. A midnight run sounded fun, she said. It'd be quiet and peaceful outside. She showed up around 10 and we watched a movie while we waited for midnight to roll around. Once the show was over, I told her the rest of why I'd invited her. I told her everything. About the void, about how it hunted me as a child, and how I fought it, and how I was now running from it. I just needed someone to run with me, I said. Someone to confirm that I wasn't imagining this, and to see what it was that pursued me, so that maybe I could have someone else to help figure out how to stay ahead of it. To her credit, she listened to the whole thing. Her discomfort was obvious, but I expected this. It's not every day that a friend springs something like this on you, and she obviously didn't believe that it was real, but she said she believed it was my reality, and she'd do whatever she could to help me understand what was happening to me. Prove that it wasn't real at first, and then get me into therapy, I thought bitterly. Well, if that was the outcome of this midnight run, I couldn't complain. It sure would be nice if this whole situation could be resolved by a bunch of counselling and whatever it is you treat hallucinations with. Honestly, I kind of wish that was what happened. You can still back out, I told her. I don't know if this is going to be dangerous for you or not. I think we'll be able to stay ahead of it, as it didn't seem like it was catching up very fast last year. But I can make no promises, and I don't know what'll happen if it catches either of us. She assured me it would be okay as she laced up her shoes. She was here to help me. We started running a bit before midnight to give ourselves time to warm up and acclimate to the weather. It was cold and the rain was mixed with sleet. We ran on the street where the pavement retained enough warmth to keep from icing over yet. I tried not to look at my watch. I'd know. I'd know when the void opened up behind us. There was no sense in stressing myself out any further. I focused on my breathing. In 1, out 2. I kept my hands close to my floating ribs, focused on the movement of my legs and how my feet landed. We need to pick up the pace, I said to my friend. I felt the tickle of the void on the back of my neck. a mounting sense of dread and a drop to my stomach, like I was falling. Like the world was falling away around me. The houses in the corner of my vision were being swallowed up, consumed by the darkness that encroached all around us, sweeping in silently from behind. My heart pounded in my chest, and the blood rushed through my ears. The terror gave new strength to my legs, and I lengthened my stride, feeling my muscles respond to carry me forwards, as if I were flying. I don't think I've ever felt so alive as I did in that moment, running from the grave that yawned hungry behind me. I didn't say anything to my friend. Not yet. I wanted to make sure we were outdistancing it before I told her to look behind us. We were moving at a good clip, and I felt the hungry presence of the void, trailing our heels, and knew that we were going to be okay. It wasn't catching up. It was persistently dogging us, but it wasn't going to catch me. Not this year. I felt elation fill my heart, and panting, I told my friend to take a quick glance behind us and tell me what she saw. "Don't stop," I said. "Just look." She did. And she slowed and turned around to stare. I screamed her name. I turned too, unwilling to leave her behind, and grabbed at her arm. I pulled hard, trying to spur her into movement. The void lay open behind us, immense enough that it blotted out the sky and the stars. The world ended in darkness mere yards away, the sidewalk breaking apart, like sand, as the void advanced, swallowing up everything that lay between me and it. "We have to go!" I screamed. "It can't catch us!" She faltered, stammered something, stunned into immobility by the impossibility that she saw. I cursed myself. This was a mistake. I shouldn't have involved someone that wasn't mentally prepared for this. She turned to run, but it was too slow. Too late. A hand wrapped around her ankle, the flat emptiness of a human hand, stretching out from the edges of the void. Another wrapped around her shin, and yet more surged forwards at that one point, using her body to drag themselves forwards. She screamed and jerked her leg away from them. I saw their fingers shatter like glass. Blood splattered on the sidewalk as it cut into the skin of her calves. She began to shriek and sob, and then more hands stretched out of the void, grabbing hold of her wrist and her hair. Slowly, inexorably, the grave advanced, and the ground beneath her began to crumble. It broke like a dropped window pane, shattering into shards, and she stumbled as one of her feet slipped on the edge of nothingness. The hands were reaching for me now. One stretched its fingers towards me, sliding along the pavement like a snake. I stared up at my friend. Her eyes were filled with tears, her face was pale, and she stood there, frozen in the mounting realization that she was going to die as a hand slid across her face, a blot of ink on her cheek, like the grave was caressing her in welcome. I let go of my friend. My eyes were filled with tears as it blurred my vision, mercifully hiding away the look on her face, as she realized I was leaving her. I ran. I ran harder than I'd ever run before, until my lungs burned in agony and the fleet stung to my face. The pain felt right. I'd abandoned my friend, and I deserved to suffer for it. At 12:11, I turned around. My legs burned. I was nearly at the end of the street. I didn't know what I'd see, if the void would only be a few yards away, and I'd watch it fade away in the last handful of seconds I had left. Instead, there was only the empty street, and the shine of the rain and sleet in the streetlights. I was alone. I searched for my friend. I did. I went back to the point we'd separated, and I looked for her up and down the street. There was nothing. The reality of what had happened didn't sink in until I reached my house. My mind was racing. I kept trying to think of what I'd do next. Did I call the police? Would they believe me? Could I make up a lie to justify them searching for her without implicating myself? Did it even matter? It wasn't like there was anything left for them to find. She was just gone. I turned down the street leading to my house, and with a shock, I realized that her car was gone as well. My driveway was empty. Her purse was gone from my house when I went inside. I tried calling her cell phone, but the entry for her number was gone, as were the texts I'd sent her. She wasn't on Facebook. She wasn't on Instagram. Wasn't on LinkedIn. It was like she'd never existed at all. I've been sitting here, trying to comprehend what has happened. The grave didn't just take her, it undid her, like she never existed at all. It wants to do the same to me, roll back the clock all the way to 12 minutes after midnight on that fateful night, to when I shouldn't have lived at all. But I think, while the grave demands to be filled, it is not discerning. It may not care who it takes. I think I found a way to keep the void at bay for another year. I need a different solution.